Whatever I believe to be true about God, I declare to be the truth about myself. The power within me, which is God, is the law of good, establishing right action in my life. In this manner, I gain dominion and exercise authority. To think is to create. This is the key which opens the doorway to wisdom and power. That doorway is already within me. Somewhere within me, the mind of God reveals the truth that I was born free, that the will of God for me is the one of goodness, truth, and beauty, that all the power there is for me. I am the image and likeness of this life. I am a personification of it. I am the personality of God. The kingdom of heaven is already within me, and the law of that kingdom is harmony, peace, and joy. Please look to the screen or the front of your program and say the affirmation with me out loud. I am a man, woman. The power within me is the power of God and is my divine authority to create. I use it wisely for the highest good. And
highest good.
Oh, well, I said good because mine says good. It's all good, and so it is.
I love how those things that seem to be mistakes are really just to make sure that we're on our toes, right? And really thinking about this thing called truth. I'd like to start with... Marcy, you did a great job. We were talking about the screen. Lovely. So I'd like to start with a story. Come on in and have a seat. Welcome. There's plenty of places to sit. We'll wait till you get settled before I start. Good morning, everybody. Lovely. All right. Oh, you know what? Actually, it was better without that. That's really in my eyes. Or maybe just turn it down. Yeah, there we go. So there's a story about a couple in a small town who had two sons. And these two sons, age 8 and 10, were the ones who were always into mischief. If there was any type of mischief going on in town, you could almost be assured that these two boys were involved. So the parents were exasperated. They had just really had it. And they heard about this clergyman who had a lot of success with troubled children. So they took their sons there, and the clergyman said, well, I'd like to see them just one at a time. So he took the 8-year-old first. And, the parents and the other son went home, and I guess they must have been just down the street. And so this clergyman looks at this little 8-year-old and says to him very sternly, "Where is God?" And the kid, is like deer in the headlights. And then he says it a little bit sterner the next time. "Where is God, young man?" And the little boy is like, doesn't know what to say, and so he finally points his finger at him and uses his strongest, most firm voice. "Where is God?" The little boy takes off, runs home, goes home, slams himself in the closet, and his older brother goes and follows him into the closet. And he said, "My gosh, what happened?" And he said, "We are in really big trouble. God is missing, and we're being blamed for it." So the children who come to our children's program, if we were to ask them, where is God, what would they say? Right here and everywhere, all around us, the all in all. One of the things I love about our teaching, and so that beautiful reading that Marcy just did, is what happens when we take the readings of Ernest Holmes and other great spiritual writers and make them personal. So that's really an important piece. We do that in our classes often when we read. We say just make it personal, turn it into I, me, mine. And then you can feel it. This is, it's one thing to read something, particularly if it's in the forms of they or us or you or whatever, and it can sound like a platitude. If you hear spiritual words, it can sound like it's just kind of empty words, and you don't really feel it or experience it. So it's important to be able to experience, to take what's in the head, these ideas in the head, and bring it down into the heart and feel it down into the subconscious. So that's what I want to focus on today is how to make this teaching alive for you and not just words that we spout off. I'm made in the likeness and image of God. But what does that really mean and how do we embody it? So I want to look at my notes here for a second to make sure I'm staying on track. So here again are some of the words from Living the Science of Mind. And listen to the difference, just using us or something, and then using me. So I'm going to use the same words. The life in us is the life of God, truth, beauty, harmony, and wholeness. The life within me is the life of God. I am truth, beauty, harmony, and wholeness. So I want you to try that on, and I'll say it slowly for you, and just repeat it after me. The life within me, is the life of God. I am truth. I am beauty. I am harmony. I am wholeness. Okay, so the next statement is, the mind within us is the mind of God, the governing principle of our lives. So let's again personalize it. The mind within me, is the mind of God. The governing principle of my life. Okay. So then the next one. The power within us is the power of God, our divine authority to create. The power within me, is the power of God. My divine authority, to create. So do you feel the difference? Okay, so this is like a first or a beginning step to embodiment. There's more. But this is and so these great spiritual teachers like Ernest Holmes and Jesus who teach these things, they're meant to be taken on this deeper level, to really for us to own them, not just to talk about them, to own it. So you and I, all of us are here to be light bearers. We're here to be a beneficial presence on the planet. That's why so many of us are called to gather on Sundays or Saturdays or whenever people gather for spiritual enrichment and for community. And so we are here then to be that transformative energy in the presence of challenge, our own challenges and in the presence of other people's challenges. So Mary Kegelman and her sisters and I had this deep intention on Friday night to provide all of those present with a healing atmosphere. There was a lot going on in the family, and the details don't matter, but for their brother Joe's memorial service on Friday night, there was a deep intention to do a lot of healing among all of the people who were there. So as a result of that intention, the whole memorial service was really built around this deep intention. And it happened. We could see because we were passing the tissues out, particularly during the forgiveness part. And, forgiving self, forgiving forgiving Joe for anything they think he did wrong or what they didn't think they did, all of that stuff. And so that is a beautiful example of the intention to be a light bearer, to be that healing presence that makes a difference. The next part of all of this, though, that is so important, and sometimes truth students, particularly people in New Thought, don't do a good job at least in the early stages. We hear all of this stuff about affirmations and speaking the spiritual truth and all of that. But if we don't do the deep inner work, all we do is a spiritual bypass. It's just a little Band-Aid on top of all of the stuff that's going on inside. So at the conference that I attended with Mary, not this Saturday, but the Saturday before, Friday and Saturday before, we had an opportunity to experience some teachings from Oneness University in India. Reverend Sylvia, who's a unity minister, led us in this because she had just been there recently. Anybody aware of Oneness University in India? I know Candace probably is. It's the teachings that are centered around the whole yogic tradition. And so it's the mystical aspect of, I'd say, of Hinduism. Wouldn't you say that would be right, Candace? Yeah, the kind of the mystical. And their teachings, when you hear about them, they're so in alignment with what we teach here. You can see how everything dovetails and fits together. So what the teaching is that we are here to be this authentic self, this light bearer of the world. And what gets in the way of our divinity, this divine essence, not showing up fully and completely? And those of us who've been in this teaching a long time know the answer, which is what? The mind. And what some people call the ego mind, negative thinking, beliefs in separation, all of that. So what happens then is there is this what they called in one university primal tension. Primal tension between who we know we are in truth and how we're showing up in the moment. And this ego mind, which we talk about, is all of that stuff that comes from thinking that we could get separated from our good in some way. And there are a whole laundry list of fears. We had a sheet just full of the prevailing fears that people have. A fear of rejection, a fear of death, a fear of failure, a fear of abandonment, a fear of the unknown, a fear of pain, a fear of loneliness. You could go on and on and on with all of these different permutations or manifestations of separation consciousness. And so the journey to the self, to the authentic self, is an inner journey. It's a journey of what they call inner integrity. Inner integrity. And that word integrity is interesting. If you look it up in the dictionary, talking about having integrity, it actually means undivided, and it means wholeness. It means, as in addition to being honest and truthful and things like that, it has to do with wholeness. So what this teaching was that was so powerful is that when we allow ourselves to look within at the thoughts that are coming up, the fears that we're feeling, that whole realm of the interior, in addition to our divine light, but it's in particular looking at the stuff that's blocking the light. When we make that a practice, it's called as having inner integrity. Because not looking at it, being unwilling to look at it, being in denial of it, does not serve us. We don't make progress, and that's why you can see sometimes truth students who've maybe been it for a while, who still have issues because they're not willing to do the deep inner work. They're into the spiritual bypass, just saying, "Oh, all is well," and in truth, all is well. But there's a deeper understanding once you get past, once you do the inner work, you begin to see, yes, really all is well. It's even all is well even in the midst of inner turmoil, because as long as I keep take that step back into my essence, into my spirit essence, and I observe it, then yes, all is well. I get to observe it. I get to see what the patterns are, and then there's some power in that. So one of the ways that they help people remember this process of inner integrity is the words trace it. So that means go within. You might even trace it. You might be listening to it, that inner dialogue, and say, now, what does that sound like? Well, it might sound like something that goes back to your family of origin, a belief structure that your family held. I was recently looking at something that was done by a cognitive therapist online. It was really powerful. He took just a common belief, I'm not good enough, that concept, and traced it back to, where did that idea come from? How did I ever get the idea that I'm not good enough? And go back to maybe being disciplined by our parents. Our parents didn't mean for us necessarily to think we're not good enough, but the stern face, the shaking of the finger, the look of disgust, or the punishment can lead a child to make a wrong conclusion. I'm not good enough. So tracing it back and looking at the pattern is one part of it. But the other part is to really be willing to face it and then embrace it. And that means when you face it and embrace it, that means you allow yourself to feel it. This is another thing that we can do with spiritual bypass, is not be willing to experience the feeling completely until it dissipates. This is something they're teaching in the Oneness University, is to feel it till it dissipates. Because otherwise it goes right back into the cells and gets stored in the body, and then it just comes out at times when you don't want it to, as a reaction of some kind. So this inner work is so powerful. So trace it, face it, embrace it. And then the last part of it is to replace it or grace it. You could use those terms interchangeably. And this is where the spiritual truth comes in really handy, because once you've cleared the way by feeling the feeling and getting in touch with maybe the thought behind it and some of this other stuff, then there's room for the spiritual truth. You're not covering it over. You're returning to that truth and affirming it from a deeper place. I find it so empowering and awe-inspiring to see how these beautiful teachings work together when we bring all of the different traditions together like this and learn from them, and how deeply we can be blessed by taking the time to really learn from each other. So we don't do spiritual bypass. We feel the feelings, we look at the belief, then we replace it with truth. This is actually the process that takes place when you work with a practitioner here, is this looking within, this inner work. They help you to do this deep inner work so that we're not just bypassing and ignoring it, pretending like it's not there, or blaming somebody else for who we are. So that's one of the keys to doing that tracing back, is to realize that this is not about blaming parents. They did the best they knew how. They picked up possibly the beliefs from their parents, but what it means is you can be the difference. You can be the one who makes the shift and embodies something new, which is your true self. So here's the beauty of this inner work of being the witness of what's going on in the mind, is when we step into witness consciousness, we become, and listen to this, the light. the light that shines away the darkness of thinking that doesn't serve us. The light. So often we can just see a pattern in our thinking and let it go. But again, if we find that we're hooked into it, that's when we want to pay attention to the feeling. Feel, and here's an important part. Feel it with compassion until it discharges. Okay. So mind chatter, just wanting to just review something I think that's really important. Mind chatter then is when we are observing that, we're actually looking at our subconscious. Did you know that? When we are observing the mind chatter, it's really the subconscious coming up for us to see it, to shine our light on it, and to let it dissipate. So what happens then as we awaken more and more and live more and more from this witness consciousness, the mind chatter recedes into the background. I'm not going to say it'll totally go away, but we transcend it. We don't let it rule and run our lives. So the thing that I love about the Science of Mind teachings that I think really struck me in a powerful way is that it uses Socratic logic. Our prayer, our affirmative prayer, has a powerful logic to it that transforms the mind by presenting an argument for the truth. How many of you have noticed that? It convinces the mind of something, of the truth. So here's an example. I'm going to read something from Ernest Holmes. He said, and I'm going to make it personal. Since the mind within me is the mind of God, I already have within me the ability to project new ideas, new thoughts, new inventions. Therefore, whatsoever ideas I desire, I know that I'm going to receive them, for I'm dealing with the mind, with a capital M, which is the conceiver of all ideas. When I call upon this mind, we're talking about the mind of God, for an answer to a problem, it knows the answer. Okay. Here's another one. By Living Science of Mind again. To think is to create. Change your thinking then. This will not be easy at first. You know what, I'm going to turn this into, I just realized I didn't turn this into. Okay, when I think I create, I am changing my thinking then. This may not be easy at first because old thought habits are prone to assert themselves, to claim that they have a right to remain in my consciousness, to harass me and torment me. But now I am wise, and I know that they have no authority. I see them to be exactly what they are, false impressions claiming to be the truth. They are a misuse of the law of freedom, but I can cast them out. So I say to them, I no longer accept you, be gone. And because they are only thoughts, they will evaporate. Let's try that for a moment. Think of a thought that you tend to have often that doesn't serve you, and let's say to it, I no longer accept you.
I no longer accept you.
Be gone.
Be gone.
Now let's say it with authority. I no longer accept you. Be gone. The master teacher Jesus used this principle when he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. And for 40 days, and 40 days, by the way, in the Aramaic tradition means the time it takes to transform. Did you know that? 40 days means the time it takes to transform. So for 40 days he was in the wilderness, and he had all kinds of temptations. You know, I've heard about these, right? And one temptation was he'd been fasting for quite a long time. He was hungry, and in the Bible it says the devil, but did you know that the devil in the Aramaic tradition does not mean a separate entity that's out there to get you? It means the egoic mind. That was their term for the egoic mind. The negative thinking that we have that come from false beliefs, thinking we're separate, thinking our good is going to be taken from us. So if you think of it in these terms then, so the egoic mind was telling him, okay, you're the Son of God, how about turning that stone into some bread? And he didn't fall for it. And there was another situation where he was taken to the top of the mountain, or maybe he was on the top of the mountain and shown all of the land around, and basically was tempted by that. And then he was put on the top of a pinnacle of temple in Jerusalem, and was said, if you're the Son of God, then get yourself down from here. So again, you can see all of this stuff can go on in the imagination. It's not necessarily that happened that way, but these beautiful teachings out of the Aramaic tradition back in Jesus' time were all symbolic stories to teach us how the mind works, how consciousness works, and to teach us of our divinity and of our authority to stand back and not be tempted by all of this negative thinking and all this aggrandized thinking, this egoic thinking, but then to stay grounded in our own true divinity, in humility and trust and love and peace and compassion. So that's another great example of how that works. But what were the words that he used when he wanted that negative thinking, which was maybe called Satan or whatever, or the devil? What terms did he use? Get thee behind me. So isn't that similar to what Ernest Holmes just said? I don't accept you, be gone. Do you see the parallel? Yeah. So it doesn't matter the words that we use. It's our intent. For the words that we use are the power of creation itself unfolding. The words we use are the power of God moving through us and as us. So we can dispel thoughts that tempt us into not being who we are in truth, not showing up, that primal tension that we talked about. We have the power to make that shift. And so you've heard of several different techniques today, right? We heard about the importance of not doing a spiritual bypass, having inner integrity, being willing to look inside, feel the feelings when necessary, let it go, the trace it, face it, embrace it, replace it, or grace it. The grace it part is the telling the truth after we've let it, we've let the feeling dissipate. And we've heard about using the power of our word to command that thought form, it's a thought form is what it is, to be dispersed and dissolved, that we do not accept it as the truth, to let it go. So let's take a breath in that. So I just have one more observation, because I don't know how many of you are watching the Olympics. But I was particularly impressed by this young man by the name of Mo Fatah, who is a long-distance runner. And do you know, in the 1,000-meter, about a quarter of the way through, he tripped. He tripped and fell, and yet he got up and he won the race. He won the race, even though he fell. And here's what I know about this man, is this man practices inner integrity. I guarantee you he does. He did not let any type of thought, anything other than his focus on winning that race, enter his mind. And if they did, I guarantee you, he said, "Be gone" to it. He chased it out as quickly as he could. We can do this too. We have this ability. And so I invite you to give yourself a lot of love and compassion, and to use some of these techniques, these beautiful spiritual techniques, to lift yourself out of the patterns that don't serve you. Because I love you, each and every one of you, and I want the best for you. I want the best for me. I want the best for you. So much love, blessings, and so it is. Amen.